I believe it's never been easier to sell, ever been easier to sell. But I actually believe it's never been harder to stand out from the crowd. And it's particularly hard to stand out from the crowd if you do nothing about it, right? But let's have the people listening into this. When is the last time they personalized a piece of their company's content? When is the last time they commented on the latest newsletter and put their personal view to that actually was curated and individual to that buyer? Or do they just say, well, it's month end, I'm going to ask Billy what he's going to order this month, or contracts coming up, 2-year contracts ending, I better start warming them up again. We don't think about how we nurture in between cycles.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. Welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Knapp, who is co-founder of Plan.Grow.Do, which is a sales training company. So Steve, welcome.
Hey Fred, it's great to be here. And I know we're going to agree on many things, but let's just start with a little bit of tension in the room, shall we? We're just a little bit more than a sales training company. And I don't say that as a sort of ego thing. I probably just say it as more broadly. I'm starting to see in the sales world that training is almost the pinnacle, the end point of what organizations need and require at this moment in time, right? Because what I'm seeing is a whole change that's gone on over the last 10 years, well, accelerated post-COVID, that training isn't really the only tool in the toolbox. So I think there's a little bit more about going back into some of the more consultancy, agency kind of approaches, where we look a little bit more systemically at the tools, the structures, the behaviors, versus just get out there and sell more in a changed world. It has its place, but I'm not sure it's the be all and end all of what's going on in the market right now.
I accept the slap down for introducing you badly, but I also agree. No, I do. I actually do say sales training because I think it's simpler for people to put you in a box, which is what the brain needs to do. But actually what I would then do, a training program is a mixture of training and coaching, which are distinctly different. And there's a whole bunch of digital support that people can do on their own, and quizzes and templates and all that. So yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Well,
so this is how we get to it.
Indeed, and I see some of this on your LinkedIn posts, right? I see that you manage workshops. I see you being a fan of the flip charts and the sticky notes, right? And I think that kind of place, that kind of work really has a place now, where it's really an experience where people get sleeves rolled up, versus just turning up to a classroom and what do they say? Retaining 5%, going away and no one checking it. So now we are indeed probably cut from a very similar cloth. Maybe just introduce ourselves for ease of budget control. Maybe.
So if you need some agency work, look at Steve's connections in the show notes below. If it's training, look for me. But we would probably do very similar things. Because something else which I think we agree on, we'll check, is this revolution, the buyer revolution. And this is something, again, that you're talking about a hell of a lot. And something else you're doing is being very, very clever on where you're niching and then really talking to them. But I think the buyer revolution you talk about for your niche, the lubricants niche, that's probably the same across the board. So tell me a little bit more about that. What is it you see, and why did it move you so much to go, I actually need to write another bloody book about this?
Well, thanks for asking the question and referencing the buyer revolution. And you're right, we do focus in on the lubricant sector, but it was born from the fact that, we were seeing Gartner telling us certain things around how the B2B sales landscape has changed. And whenever we went into rooms, it'd have people of my age, and I won't bring you into that same conversation yet, Fred, but people of my age were sat there, people were sat there, folded their arms and were saying, well, it's different here. How many times have you heard that, mate, right? How many times have you heard, well, it's different here. You don't know my market. You don't know my customers. Now, what people didn't probably realize is that I'd had 20 plus years selling lubricants. So when they said it's different here, I intuitively didn't believe it, but I still had to prove it. So we partnered with a couple of very key players, UKLA, the UK Lubricants Association, Lube News, so Lube Magazine, and ILMA in North America, so the Independent Lubricant Manufacturers Association. And we kind of said, we've got a couple of questions that we need to answer in the market, because the world fundamentally has changed and sellers are still doing the same things that they've always done, trying to bolt on this thing called digital and this thing called social, like at the end of their day, in secret, in the dark room, not entirely overtly integrated into how they do the work. So we looked at that and we thought, well, how does this get credibility? And the credibility piece came from asking buyers who bought the stuff. How do you want your sellers to pitch up? How do you want the brand or the people to represent themselves? Or how do you solve your own problems? How do you self-research? And we asked them lots of questions. And I'm very grateful for all of those that responded. 1,100 buyers responded. We've got over 25,000 different data points. And now we can absolutely sit in the room to those guys who fold their arms and say, well, matey, that's not quite the case. It is indeed very similar in your industry. And there are some areas where, when I say your industry, our industry, I want to call it, where there are some nuance. And that's what we now understand, Fred.
Yeah. And I absolutely love it. Many reasons. We were saying just before we start hit record about kind of really focusing in and drilling down and showing expertise in a certain sector. I would say there's lots of similarity. But no, this is your buyers in your sector have said this. But what I also like about it is that it's not that you are broken, you are wrong, you are failing, blame the salesperson. It's just things are different. It has changed. There are shifts. And that you've made the shifts, you haven't. It's like, and I think it just gives you a far more elegant way of talking to people in a way that they will probably want to respond.
You're bad.
You're bad.
Well, I think this is the reassuring part, actually, for B2B sellers across the piece, because you said it's similar in engineering, and yeah, it is. We focus in on lubricants, finished lubricants across the supply chain of lubricants and associated industries within that. But the comforting part is, first off, nobody goes to work to do a bad job, right? So nobody wants to screw this up. Nobody wants to not make their target. Nobody wants to disappoint a customer. Nobody wants to have pressure at work because they're missing their numbers. Sometimes it's just about what do I not know that's changed, or what do I know that's changed, but my organization hasn't yet empowered me or given me the overt, expectation to go do it. And what we found is it isn't a rewrite of the sales playbook. It absolutely isn't. All it is overlaying digitalization, now thinking about AI coming down the line, but actually 60% plus of what you did is still absolutely valid, absolutely the right thing to do. The key point is it needs to be done at a different time in the buyer's journey and in the sales process. So we found that the biggest change is that when a seller recognizes that when a buyer is further through their buying journey than they imagined they were, the meetings and conversations that they have are focused on validation and not on qualification. And I think that's a very big difference in how at least the lubricant sector needs to tee itself up to succeed. it's sellers need to know that their first job is to validate, where did you find me? What did you read? How did you get to this point? And then they educate with insight, instead of going in saying, I sell this, this is what I'm about, trying to find the problem. The buyer ultimately has diagnosed their problem.
Yeah.
And I think this is, so all of this, if we know this as a seller, our skills that we're renowned for, face-to-face, adding value, adding insight, matter. They just matter at a different time.
And so need to be applied probably slightly differently. It's a very similar thing. I will often say to people like, if you're getting an RFP and you didn't know it was coming, and you get all, RFP, they love me, they must like us, all the stuff I've done, they want to buy from me. It's like, but you didn't know this was happening. There has been a ton of work that's gone on beforehand to get to that point. They've done it without you. They've done it on their own, or they've done it with somebody else. So bear that in mind. Get over yourself. That there is a distinct likelihood decision, if not already made, it's leaning in a different place. So let's think about how you can get involved earlier. This is something I would. Or look, if you are getting these, like you said, validate, qualify, be very, very careful how much time and effort you're going to put into that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to
your education piece could be quite annoying. It's like
what it is, it destroys value. If you're going in, you're destroying value. And so I'm going to throw 283s at you. 283 stats. 83% of lubricant buyers know what they want before they phone you and call you in. Before they reach out to your organization, be that an email, contact form, whatever your way of capturing that is. 83%. Okay. So I would say, if you're saying, I'm going to find out what you want, you're destroying value, because I already know what I want. Your job is to validate it. Now, and the other 83 is 83% of buyers say that lubricant sellers are less prepared for the meeting than they are. Now,
Ouch.
Now that stings, right? And actually it causes a bit of tension in the room, because no, we're not. We're prepared. We prepare. We know what we're doing. Okay, then you can dig in a bit. Do you have a pre-call plan? Some don't. Many don't. Some do. Is it consistent? No. But the most important point here is, it's not that you're not preparing. You're preparing for a different meeting. And if you're preparing for a different meeting, regardless of how prepared you are for that meeting, from the perception of your buyer, you're unprepared. They are more prepared than you are. So it's really important that, as a seller, you use the word get over yourself. I think there's a real moment in time where sellers now need to understand not only that aspect of they need to be more active early, but they also need to understand how buyers buy. And I think that's why we called this thing the buyer revolution, and why it really worked, because it doesn't expose the seller for having a lack of skill. It just shows how the line has moved and that they have to play a slightly different game within the dance, if you like.
I like that. I like the idea of playing different games, the sort of the dance, the choreography, and the skills you've got. Which one do you use these a bit differently? Because there's this kind of, they've already decided, we go in, so I'm prepared to understand their pain. Find out the problems, diagnose the solution, solve it for them. It's like, it's done. You're just annoying now. You're wasting time. And because I've solved it myself, guess what? I think it's our IKEA effect, isn't it? That I'm fairly wedded to that way of doing it. Your way might be better, but I'm unlikely to change.
Very much so.
The kind of pain thing. And I don't know if we do this as much in sort of, if I say the industrial, the engineering world, and kind of bring the blue guys into there. This kind of pecking away like a demented woodpecker at paint to really make you feel it and want to do something. It's like, no, I am doing something. That's what I'm talking to you. I'm 83% further down the line than you thought.
Well, indeed. And when you think about these segments and sectors, lubricants, engineering, how much business really changes hand in a year from one supplier to the next? So there's a real supplier loyalty here, right? And I think that's the other part that sellers don't necessarily leverage, is how do they maintain trust in between orders? right? So 85.3, very specific, percent of lubricant buyers say we would go to the incumbent supplier first for our new needs. Now, for me as a salesperson, if nearly all of my customers are going to come to me first, I'm going to be passionate about adding value to them in between orders, right? Be that through insightful articles, be that through industry insights, be that through just meeting them at a physical event. Because, we're talking all about digital here, but meeting them at an expo or a trade show. But meeting them and sharing insight, not just the personality side of things. That comes through. So keeping people in your holding pattern has never been such an easy gift of salespeople, but one that they choose to not leverage as much as they can. Because I believe it's never been easier to sell, ever been easier to sell. But I actually believe it's never been harder to stand out from the crowd. And it's particularly hard to stand out from the crowd if you do nothing about it, right? But let's have the people listening into this. When is the last time they personalized a piece of their company's content? When is the last time they commented on the latest newsletter and put their personal view to that actually was curated and individual to that to that buyer? Or do they just say, well, it's month end, I'm going to ask Billy what he's going to order this month, or contracts coming up, 2-year contracts ending, I better start warming them up again. We don't think about how we nurture in between cycles. So all of this really, really matters, because what lubricant buyers are telling us, and I know that for people, you might say, oh, it's lubricant buyers, but they're saying we really, really value sellers that look long-term. If you come to us with product sales or volume sales, all you're trying to do is hit your target. Yeah. And I can see through that as a buyer, and I will see through that. And I would treat you as a commodity salesperson.
I will put you into this category.
Correct.
Actually, you put yourself in, because you start behaving like that.
You've put yourself into this category.
Talk about being a trusted advisor all you want. Yeah. It's not you who does that. I bestow that on her, and I do that on the way in which people behave, what they've done. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to see Fred, because Fred is going to come and teach me something that I can't Google. I'm not looking forward to seeing Harry, because when Harry comes in, all he's going to do is talk about products and when can he deliver them.
And I know more about products than he does, because he only talks about his own. I know his and all his competitors.
Well, you see, and this is it, right? And this is it. So I think that this buyer revolution really matters, because we're already highlighting in signposting that it is an equal playing field. You hear people over years saying, you've got to get trust, you've got to maintain trust. And if the buyer is driving one agenda and you're driving another, you're never going to. But actually, we can control that narrative.
Yeah. Well, I sometimes call it the recycled evolution narrative, when people put out that, everything's changed, you're bad, it's broken. It's deficit shouting. It's actually not that new, is it? Again, you of a similar age, Steve, can you remember there's an advert? I think it was for Royal Mail, which I kind of had the tagline, or the thing that happened in the advert was, I saw this and thought of you.
Indeed. Yeah.
And it was somebody sort of cut something out of paper or something, stuck it in an envelope and sent it off to somebody. So that's, God knows, 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, cut it out, stick it in an envelope. It's probably dead clever now. I think you really need to, it's never been easier, because we've got all the digital channels and everything else. Yeah. A bit of lumpy stuff actually is probably going to come through, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, regardless whether it's lumpy, because actually, my business partner is 40, he's a millennial, he's digitally native, right? So you kind of go, you've got to sell how your buyers like to buy, not how you like to sell. And I think understanding that really important. Like we went, my daughter's getting married in the summer, And this weekend we have to go and test everything. The venue, we have to walk the walk we're going to walk. And it was very interesting. Now,
But you mean the food and the drinks, what you went?
Well, that's what I tested, and it passed muster. It passed muster. But Tom, who's going to be my son-in-law, he said, "Well, why are we walking from the venue to the registry office? Why are we doing that?" His mum said, "Well, to see how long it takes." He said, "Well, I've just looked on Google Maps."
Let's get into the food.
Yeah. So I but again, you take these sort of cues, right? So Tom being mid-20s, his default position is very different to us as the parents of them, right? Well, let's walk the walk and see how long it takes. No, let's just look at Google Maps. Now, lumpy mail, digital mail, whatever it is, knowing how your buyer buys and how they like to receive information and content is also part of this early nurturing and trust building, right? Yeah. And I think just taking the time to do that, and that ultimately is a skill that's been a forever skill, knowing preferences, knowing habits, and playing into that. Sellers are chameleons after all.
Yeah.
But we're not manipulative.
No, we adjust to make it easier for the person to understand what it is we're saying. We're kind of communicating with them, whether that's personality style or whether it's kind of chat, route, message channel, to make it easier for them. Yeah, and I think we just need to be more accomplished. When we're at hybrid selling, actually, it's about this. It's about the sort of like, the analogy I used at the time was it's if you imagine a drummer and you've got one drumstick and a snare drum and you're tapping away on it. I mean, it's not the greatest performance in the world, is it? Yeah. Look at a good top drummer. They've got this drum kit, which is probably fairly big, and it's got these different things. Or maybe a drum they only play twice in the whole of the concert, but it has that particular sound. Yeah. And if you're Tommy Lee, then you've got like a roller coaster that your drum kit's attached to, and it's going all over the stage. So, wow, better performance because you've got all of these things that you can tap into to deliver that. And that's what we're saying. It's like, well, yeah, phone, yeah, email, video, social, which is probably easy elements of video, but these other things where you can put this stuff out there if you know how to. But ultimately, the content, the bit that you're saying that's at the center of it, that's got to be valuable. That's got to be useful.
It's got to be valuable. It's got to be useful. It's got to be specific to that persona, right? So we have a joke. Yeah, we have people say to us, for all your lubricant needs, you look at a website, for all your lubricant needs. Well, I don't have all needs. I have this need. Yeah. We've been in business for 50 years. I don't care. We've won these awards. Brilliant. We've got 6 new trucks delivered. Great. Now, all of these things in themselves are important in terms of my validation steps, but they're not the reason I'm going to buy from you, because that's not my problem. So you're right. The bit that needs to be at the middle of all of this is your understanding of the problems you solve. And sellers have the risk that digital makes them lazy, right? Because we can talk to everybody, we think that could be a valid approach. The ones that succeed are the ones that niche down. Yeah. So an engineering manager, a fleet manager, a production manager, a sustainability manager, a procurement manager even, all have different needs and different motivations. So one of the gifts that a seller has is to be able to talk to those individuals through personalization. And I think that for me is the bit where at times we say to people, if we know that buyers are so far through their buying journey and what they're doing is consuming your content, they're researching, they're validating, make it easy for them. Don't make it hard, make it easy. Call it out, call them out, call out the problems you solve. And it might be that what you don't get is this viral post that goes around thousands and thousands of people and you get the thumbs up. Who cares? And I know people have heard this before, but we write things and create things for one person. One person. That's our measure of success sometimes, that it hits that one person.
Okay, so by that, do you mean, so when you're thinking, are you thinking one persona, or are you saying, actually, next week I have a meeting with this individual. I suspect they will have a look at my LinkedIn profile. When they see this, there is an article that they will go, oh, wow, this guy gets it.
I've done that many times, and I will continue to do it. I will answer the questions that they will ask in an article. I will publish it on LinkedIn, and I will personally send it as a message or an email and said, I thought of you.
Yeah. And to all the people who are similar to that. So you write it for person X, but there is A, B, C, D up to Y, Z who are very similar. So actually that article, oh, but Fred, that's only gone to 26 people now.
Yeah.
It's only gone to 26 people. And guys, you've got to do to get 26 conversations and 26 chances to go and get what your problem is and look, there's a way to do something with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that kind of concept, regardless of how people who are listening maybe take that idea and run with it, I think there's an issue here that leadership have to almost accept that as a valid sales approach these days. Organizations are still set very traditionally, and we measure things that we hear, we measure things that we see, we measure things that we did that worked in the past. So there's a boldness and a braveness that needs to be accepted organizationally now, that some of the things we do are very silent. Some of the things we do take longer. And we say in the sales funnel, the classical sales funnel, we're happy if you go slow at the start to go fast at the end. But if you go fast at the start, someone's going to slow you down as you go through it. So it's really critical that organizations recognize from a buyer lens, which is why the buyer revolution exists. Organizationally, what do we need to do? To almost put our stamp on to say, you can do this. You can build time into your week. You can build time into your suspecting and prospecting. Because actually, I don't want you to be doing this at the end of the day and shoehorning it in, because that's not right.
Yeah. Interesting what you say about that, about then, all right, yeah, got it, Steve, we'll try and measure it. So should we measure how many likes it gets? No, because you will drive the behavior of putting cat pictures.
Yeah.
Says someone who puts cat pictures. I'm allowed to. No, but they're deliberate. They are deliberately designed to be attractive to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Saturday type post. Yeah. In the week is, I am talking to this person here.
Yeah.
And all of that, yeah, you're talking about the sales funnel, the process, the thing we're trying to do to move people down towards a sale. But all of this done well is only going to assist you in elevating your sales stature, your reputation.
Yeah.
I tend not to use personal brand in this world. You probably don't in lubricant world either, do you?
Well, do you know, I mean, we've seen the importance of how, let's call it personal brand, can amplify the corporate brand, right?
Yep.
We've seen that through the buyer revolution research. And this is a funny statistic. 0% of lubricant buyers look forward to a corporate post. 0%. So there's all the marketeers going. Not one. But 63%.
And that's their own corporate. No.
Yeah. But 63% will engage with it if it's personalized. So personalized branding matters. Now, it's a little bit of a naughty word, I don't want to be a celebrity, and I don't like the celebrity side of personal branding. I like to see it more as brand amplification, and I like to see it more as having the confidence as a seller to stand in front of the brand, in front of it instead of behind it. So what you're doing is you're inherently pulling all the value from the brand, but you're leveraging your relationships and your insight into your network. So it's a really critical part. And I don't know how different it is in engineering, but I don't imagine that the corporate posts are that sexy either.
Exploded product thing, whatever. It's very, very similar. This is why I was so keen on talking to you. So I was talking about this in the tens. I talked about sales stature. There wasn't a different word for it, but it was like sort of setting yourself apart. reputation, enhance your reputation. And then part of this is, I mean, you're kind of mapping it to corporate, but part of it is like, actually, no, I would go and talk to your company. I just don't want to talk to you. Why? Because I can't see how you're adding value compared to this other guy over here or girl over here that's saying, I want to talk to them. Yeah, but they're not your area manager. I don't care. I'm a customer. I get to choose who to talk to, but it ain't you. Because I can't see anything coming from you that's going to be a good use of my time.
Yeah.
If I'm doing anything in your company, it's them over there. I can see what they're all about.
And just to emphasize how true that point is that you've just made, as a buyer, if I don't see you, I'm even more skeptical about you and your company, because what are you hiding? What are you hiding? So it's a very interesting new commodity, a new commodity that's in a salesperson's toolkit. This new commodity is one that we are learning. Is it a cat post? Is it a blog article written for somebody specifically? Is it something where I need to, the magic orange hat over your shoulder? Is it something that I need to do to become memorable and signal? And we're learning this. And it is harder for some to learn than others. It's harder for some to adapt and adopt into their work than others. But I would really advocate any seller out there, don't ignore it, because AI's coming next. And if you've missed the digital journey, it's going to be quite worrying for you to be found by this new biggest filtering robot there's ever been in mankind.
Let's do another one on that. We've got our thoughts together, because time has flown, Steve. I knew it would. And we've covered a lot of stuff there, but I mean, you've got all of this stuff ready for people to take, haven't they? If there's somebody who thinks, well, I want a bit more of this, where can they get it? Where have you got more stuff? Because you do practice what you preach. You have to.
We do. I mean, the obvious social place to find me hanging out is LinkedIn. So just look for Steve Knapp on LinkedIn. Our website is a great place. Lots of resources there. Plan.Grow.Do.com. We run a podcast. So if you're interested in the stories of the people in the lubricant industry, that's called Beyond the Blend. So there'll be 3 places. There's others. You'll find them. Once you're in my ecosystem, you'll find breadcrumbs all over the place.
The spider. Again, that is part of the point. So we can drop links. We will drop links to those in the show notes, and of course there will be within that ecosystem there'll be a link to your book as well. The new book, the latest one, Selling Smarter. Selling. Yeah. Let me get it right. I got the intro wrong. I'm going to get the outro wrong as well. What a beautiful balance. Selling lubricants smarter. There we go. So you'll find that in there. But Steve, thanks so much for coming along, sharing some thought. Yeah, those links are there so people can get in touch and mention this, that you heard us chatting, and what it is that they want to discuss a bit more with you.
Magic. Thanks for having me on, Fred.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.